competition. I don't see Qatar breaking down that defense and scoring a goal unless it's super lucky. So for me, I don't see this going anywhere else than a Netherlands win, them topping the group and moving into the round of 16 quite comfortably. So I think Netherlands, although it might not be a big win, we know Netherlands don't really beat teams 4-5, 6-0. I still think they're going to win, and we're going to stay safe for the game preview. And if you want to see a bet that has slightly higher odds, make sure to come check out our best picks that drops at the same time as this video. So we're going for a Netherlands win at odds of -500. Next up, and probably the biggest game of the day, it's Iran taking on the USA. Now, if this was an all-stakes game already, the press conference that happened earlier today made the stakes a lot higher by some of the comments that were said. Now, the equation is simple for the USA. They need to win to make it through to the knockout stages. And it's the same for Iran. All they have to do is win or draw this game, and they are through to the knockout stages. This is what the World Cup is all about. These knockout games, everything's going to be on the line and the best team will come out. Now, the USA started their journey against Wales with a 1-1 draw and then drew to England 0-0. To be honest with you, they looked the better side against England. They really threatened them. The defense was solid, and I expect them to give it to this Iran team. They're not going to sit back. They're going to fight for this win, and I think this game's going to be decided between one goal either way. Now, what USA will also be needing is just a little bit of luck. They haven't had any luck in their first two match days, and to win a match like this, you do need the cards to fall for you quite nicely. So hopefully USA can get some luck and they can move on to the knockout stages. Now, Iran weren't so good against England. They opened their campaign with a 6-2 loss against England, Taremi getting both of those goals, and then they came back and beat Wales 2-0. Now, USA will draw from their 2010 World Cup experience where they needed to beat Algeria in the final match day to advance. Lando Donovan scored in the 92nd minute to win the game 1-0, and the USA progressed. I think we might see something similar in this game. It'll probably be a late goal that someone scores, and if there is a man who's going to score it for the USA, it will be Weston McKennie. He's looked so good in the England and Wales game, and I'm expecting him to be a real threat in this game against Iran. And like I said, this is a very close game with a lot at stake, but I do think the USA get this done. However, for the game preview, we're going to stay away from the results and go for under 2.5 goals at odds of -155. Then lastly, for day 10, we've got Wales taking on England. Now, England just need a draw to secure the top spot in this group and move into the knockout stages. Now, for Wales, it's going to be a bit more complicated. Wales need to beat England and Iran need to lose to the USA for Wales to progress into the knockout stages. Now, this will be a fiery encounter. Wales versus England it always brings out the best in both of these teams, but the bookies have barely given Wales a chance of winning that game because the last 6 times that these teams have met, England have won every single one. Adding to that, if we just look at the Iran game from both teams, England with a 6-2 victory, Wales with a 2-0 loss. I mean, put A and B together and you do get an England win out of here. However, Danny Ward will be starting for Wales. He's been in great form in the Premier League. Yes, he let 2 late goals in by Iran, but he is a good keeper. Rob Page will also be looking to add Daniel James and Joe Allen to the starting 11 to spice it up a bit and bring some more goal threats into the game. England, in my opinion, should also change the team up a little bit. Bring in Phil Foden, absolute star at Man City, Rashford, Kyle Walker. They do need to tweak a little bit because that 0-0 draw against the USA just isn't going to cut it later on in the tournament, and they're going to need these young strike players to really perform when the time comes. So bearing all of this in mind, I do think England win this quite comfortably. They are big match players. They'll be up for the occasion. Gareth Bale will hope to get on the scoreboard and maybe give England a little bit of a challenge, but I do think this goes England's way, which is why my bet is England at -1.5 handicap at odds of +120. To wrap it all up, in the Ecuador versus Senegal game, we've got a draw at halftime at odds of -110. We've got the Netherlands to win. In the Iran-USA game, we've got under 2.5 goals at odds of -155. And in the England-Wales game, we've got England at a handicap of -1.5 at odds of +120. Again, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the Odd Shoppers channel, make sure to do so now. Also, click the link in the description to go deposit your first $10, bet your $10, and get $200 in free bets from BetMGM. As always, my name is Jordan Burrs. You can find me at Jordan Burrs on YouTube, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Stokastic DFS NFL Live Before Lock. My name is Matt Savoca, and we are here to break down not the most exciting game on this entire slate, but a pretty interesting one. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Indianapolis Colts. A pretty cool showdown slate indeed. And with me to break this one down is none other than the showdown shaman himself, Neil Orfield, at Player Q DFS, as he is always on Monday nights. What's going on, man? How are you?
Yeah, it's not my favorite game to watch, this Steelers versus Colts game. These are two of my lowest owned teams in best ball, so I don't have a lot of natural rooting interest, but it is kind of interesting for showdown purposes just because we have some moving parts. We've got some players out. We've got Chase Claypool gone for 2 games now, so kind of a small sample size of what these Steelers are going to be without Chase Claypool. It is kind of a fun one.
Yeah, some interesting storylines certainly to dig into, and that's why we bet. That's why we play DFS, right? That's why we put the money down so that we can, get some skin in the game, get some action on this. We're glad you guys are here. The hundreds, if not thousands of you pouring in. And we thank our sponsor right off the top, No House Advantage. We're going to check in with the overlay there. We got an awesome offer for you over there as well. Yes, the Steelers are the 5th worst team in the NFL. If you look at the current draft ranking, or the draft, if it started today, it would be the Pittsburgh Steelers as the 5th overall pick. I was kind of talking before the show about how they don't have a ton to play for, at least this season, in terms of the win department. But still, they're facing a Colts team that I'm actually surprised at home. They're favored by just 2.5 points. Does that spread kind of surprise you? Because I feel like the Colts are a significantly better team, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I think so too. That is a surprise to me. Maybe it's the coaching change. Maybe Vegas doesn't believe in Jeff Saturday. I don't know, but yeah, it does surprise me a bit.
Yeah, Saturday, first time for Saturday on a Monday, if you will. And look, kind of what the game environment is going to look like for both teams here. They would love to just run it down your throat, play old school smash mouth football, and kind of hide the inefficiencies of both teams' quarterbacks. Now, I have a little more faith in Matt Ryan now that he's back inserted into the lineup, but we're still talking about a team in the Colts who, in terms of pass offense DVOA, they're 31st in the NFL. Obviously, some of that includes Sam Ehlinger. The Steelers, not much better, right? 21st in pass DVOA. And both defenses significantly better at stopping the run. They are the 5th and 6th best defenses in the NFL in rush DVOA. So we'll see. We'll see kind of how both teams are able to kind of adjust here. Just looking at the quarterbacks from a real football standpoint, who do you like better at this point in their respective careers? Kenny Pickett or Matt Ryan?
I mean, I think that my natural inclination is to go to the younger quarterback who has some rushing upside. I think that just from a fantasy perspective, he's the more exciting option for me. But who do I like better? I mean, on this slate in particular, we have to look at the ownership, and it looks like Kenny Pickett is getting. Actually, no, he has a little bit of positive leverage. I was looking at FanDuel first, looking like he was getting too much, but we've got a little bit of positive leverage on Kenny Pickett. We have even more positive leverage on Matt Ryan. So for this slate, I guess I'd have to say Matt Ryan, but overall, I think I'm more excited to play Kenny Pickett. Maybe that's just being a dumb football fan. You wanna see the young guys come out and be exciting.
Okay, that's fair.
Who's your preference? Who do you like?
I think Kenny Pickett is fine as from a real football standpoint, but I actually think Matt Ryan is still a mediocre, league average NFL quarterback. In terms of team pass plays per game, the Colts, when Matt Ryan is on the field, they've been the 8th highest pass play per game offense on the league. Even while being benched, he has 10 passing TDs. His true completion percentage, one of the advanced metrics I like to look at, 5th best in the NFL. Player Profiler has his accuracy rating at number 7. And we just can't say that about Kenny Pickett. Ultimately, I know this is a run-first team now with Jeff Saturday, Jonathan Taylor back at the helm, but I still think Matt Ryan, from a real football perspective, is the player I would rather have at this very moment. Obviously, if you're building a franchise today, or if you're looking at our tools, you might say otherwise. But I do think Matt Ryan, from a real life standpoint, is really interesting here. Then we got to move to the inactives and active players. The first player I think is really interesting is DeForest Buckner, the key defensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts. He's active today. Most of the inactives we pretty much knew about. Jalen Warren going to be absent for the Steelers, which means backup running back absolutely may be in play today. But any inactives or actives other than that that caught your eye or maybe changed the way you were building lineups?
I think Kylan Granson being out gives a little bit more opportunity, makes Mo Alley Cox a little bit more interesting than he otherwise would have been. Maybe brings Jelani Woods into play. I think so. I think that's a little bit interesting. Miles Boykin being out, I guess, helps a little bit in terms of wanting to play Steven Sims and Gunnar Olszewski. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that. Gunnar Olszewski. I think it's Olszewski.
I think you nailed it. Olszewski or something like that.
Yeah, we're close. We're at the very least, we're
confidence.
close. Olszewski, yeah. This guy, Gunnar Olszewski. As you mentioned, Jalen Warren being out, maybe we can play a little bit of Benny Snell. They sometimes they just play Najee Harris the entire game if they're not confident in the backup running back. So it's not a high confidence play, but at least we know most likely who they are going to in the event that Najee Harris gets hurt, or maybe there's some garbage time they want to run out the clock. Probably Benny Snell is a guy at very low ownership and a $200 price tag. So I think you can go there. I think those are the main inactives that are having an impact here. And then of course the Chase Claypool trade, which not an inactive, and they have played 2 games since that trade. So we have some idea what they want to do, but still a fairly small sample size.
Yeah, agreed here. I'm looking at the chat. I just realized that Matt Ryan, who was benched during the season, has more touchdowns this year than Mr. Unlimited. Russell Wilson is just we've been tortured by the Denver Broncos earlier in the Showdown slate season. Thankfully, they've been removed for the most part. Yeah, ultimately, I looked at Kiki Kuti not being in the lineup. I thought maybe we would see him be more than a special teams player through the second half of the season. Obviously, that won't be happening tonight. Kylan Granson, the tight end for the Indianapolis Colts, is also out tonight. So we will see Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods kind of sharing the main receiver tight end roles for this team. I do think that ultimately, though, this defense is banged up overall in Indianapolis, and I think the Steelers may be able to do a little bit more than the metrics indicate that they might be able to do. So like you were saying, we may be able to take some alternative shots, especially in tournaments. Looking at the rest of the board, I don't think there's any other game environment things we really need to break down. So I'll ask you the question I always ask you at the end of this section. Look, this game total is at 39.5. Earlier this morning, I was looking some places, it was at 39. And check Odd Shopper because you'll be able to see how the lines change and where they differ from place to place. But right now, what are the chances that this game goes a touchdown over its implied total? Just off the top of your head, what are the percentage chances it shoots out?
I'm going to say 28%.
There you go. Now with the confidence, Neil, just right on a number.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little bit lower. I think this is about a 1 in 5 chance. We're still, 1 in 5 to 1 in 6. We're not talking about 0. And this is the thing I always like to point out. You're talking about, a quarter to 30% chance this game goes to a mid 40s total. It just means that it's viable, especially in tournaments when you're trying to take down large fields, the ones you're going to be playing today. You can play for a passing game shootout, even though it doesn't look like the way that most teams or these 2 teams want to play. Anything else from a team or game environment standpoint you want to point out before we dig into this one player by player?
Not really. I think that we can probably jump in and talk about it, position by position. We can go over it as we're doing positions. I can't think of any other big emphasis points on this slate. I think it's a slate, I guess, that you can leave a little bit more salary on the table. I'll say that. I feel like the mid-range options are a little bit more, it's more of a gray area, the distinctions between the high-end options and the mid-range options to some extent. So I think that it's viable to leave more salary on the table, but we can do it. We can go position by position.
Awesome. That's a really good point. And speaking of good points, how about a way to get $200 in free bets with just a $10 money line bet on the World Cup? That's a pretty good point because all you need is one goal from any team when you make a $10 pregame money line bet over at BetMGM, and then you can get $200. And if you look at the fine print there, really, you bet $10, on a pregame money line bet, and no matter what happens in the World Cup, you're getting $200 in free bets. Now, it's not available in New York, Pennsylvania, Mississippi, Ontario, And so that's important to mention. So you also have to use the link below in the video description. That's also really important. Otherwise, we can't track it. We can't help you. But it is one of the easiest ways to build up that bankroll tonight. $10 into $200 over at BetMGM when you use the link in the video description below. And thank you, producer Mike, as well, for putting it in chat right there. 2 places you can get it. Let's get going over at BetMGM, an awesome place to play. All right, we go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Underdogs on the road. I did see their implied total move creep up from 18 and a quarter, 18 and a half now as we get closer to kickoff. Talk to me about Kenny Pickett. What are we doing with him on the slate? How do you feel about him? You said you kind of prefer him in real football, just by a hair, to Matt Ryan. Talk to me how you're playing him on the slate.
I should clarify. I think I was talking more about DFS than real football. In real football, I agree with you that Matt Ryan is still the better quarterback. Just as far as who I like more, I'm more excited about playing the young guy more so than I actually think he's a better quarterback. But yeah, I think that he makes for a solid play on this slate. We've got Kenny Pickett coming in at 9.4% ownership in the captain spot, 9.9% optimal. That's essentially neutral. He's a guy that we have him optimal in the captain spot 10% of the time. That's a good captain play on a slate like this. He's near the top of the board in terms of odds of being the optimal captain. Looks great there. And then, of course, in the util spot, 42% projected ownership, 45% chance of being optimal. We've got positive leverage there. I like the fact that he's got a little bit of rushing upside. He has rushed for between 20 and 25 yards on average per game this year. He's also rushed for 3 touchdowns already. He's only started 6 games, played 7 total. So he's an interesting play. He's only had 1 game where he rushed for over 50 yards. So one real spike week, if you don't count the touchdowns, but he's at least shown that it's in his bag of tricks that he can run the ball more so than Matt Ryan. So I think that he's viable to play in the captain spot with just 1 pass catcher. I still want at least 1 with him. He's not like Lamar Jackson where he's going to just get there, or Jalen Hurts last night, who rushed for ridiculous number of yards. I don't think that Kenny Pickett is likely to get that 100-yard bonus, but he could rush for 40 yards and a touchdown and throw 1 touchdown, and on a short slate that might be enough to be optimal. So I think that you can play him with just 1 pass catcher in the captain spot and potentially even run him naked, I think, in the util spot.
That's interesting. I mean, I wasn't sure about how you were going to feel about just playing Pickett alone. Again, the caveat we've brought up 1,000 times, we'll bring up 1,000 times more. Quarterback, 1 game slate, probably going to get to plenty of Kenny Pickett. But the rushing is really the thing that stands out to me. You're not getting any rushing from Matt. Well, I have to take that back because Matt Ryan had like the rushing game of his life recently since coming back onto the field. But I still don't think that's something that's really going to move the needle a whole lot in my expectation for Ryan going forward. He's number 12, Pickett, in carries per game at the quarterback position. In red zone carries, I do have to say that the Steelers seem to move entirely away from Kenny Pickett. Might be protecting their rookie quarterback a little bit because he only averages 0.6 red zone carries per game. That's outside the top 20 quarterbacks. Obviously, that's upside that we can't deny, right? It's moved his expected fantasy points, despite being a team that does not pass efficiently, up to 14th among all quarterbacks in the NFL this year. Surprisingly high. It's just that he's not actually delivering on those expected fantasy points. He's at 4 fantasy points below expectation per game this season. So we see a lot of inefficiency from rookie quarterbacks. As you mentioned, the tools are going to make us pretty bullish on him. There's a lot of reasons that we can go to him. I just think there is a real life football risk of ruin here, even though the Indianapolis Colts are a better run defense than they are a pass defense. I think they could shut down Kenny Pickett. Again, we're talking about, a half dozen starts for the first year quarterback this year.
Yeah, no, that is a very real possibility. I agree with you. It's just a 1 game slate. As we've talked about many times, you got to, make some choices on a 1 game slate. You got to play somebody in this game, right? I'm not all that confident in that many players in this game. So yeah, Kenny Pickett, you could certainly fade him. I agree with you. There is certainly the possibility that he gets completely shut down, but I think that there are scenarios where he also has a big spike week. And I think that he is, as I said, just looking at the tools, he's got a 10% chance of being the optimal captain. We've got him in the optimal lineup over 50% of the time. So certainly, yeah, there is that risk of ruin for Kenny Pickett, but I'm probably going to be playing over. My guess is I'm going to be above the field. He's going to be more than half of my lineups.
And we have seen games, by the way, 51-yard rushing games. He's passed for 327 yards in his game. So we know the ceiling is there. He maybe hasn't put it all together in one game. So as you said, there is a chance that he does go off. People in the chat asking me if I played the game and therefore I can't comment on it. Isn't the whole point of the show to figure out who's going to be good at football so we can figure out who's going to score fantasy points? I'm just trying to get my read on it. Like, if you want to be like, I played terrible high school football. No, that's why I'm talking about it here. But I just wanted to.
It's always a weird gatekeeping thing. Like, if you didn't play the game, you can't have takes. Come on, we can have takes.
Is there like a line I could get in where I could like put on pads on a field and get tackled a certain amount of times, and then I have the credibility?
Then you'll have that street cred. Yeah, you got to get tackled.
Street cred.
Yeah.
How many likes do we have to get for you to get onto an NFL field and tackled by an NFL player in full pads, knowing it's coming?
Who's the NFL player?
Let's just say it's someone at on an active roster on defense.
Probably. How many people we got watching right now?
We got about 1,500, just shy of 1,500.
All right, 3,000 likes and I'll do it.
Okay. So tell everyone to get in here. First of all, tell everyone you know. Retweet the show wherever you are, or your social media of choice. Oh man, and hit the like button as well. It does help us go a long way, even if you might not be tackled by someone. You have the credit in my book because of how many times you've freaking top the leaderboard. I digress. Let's move to the running back position. Pickett's going to be playable today in all formats because he's a quarterback on a one-game slate, even if I'm kind of naysaying his efficiency in his rookie season. Okay, well, let's move to the running back position where Najee Harris is clearly viable. What are you doing with Najee Harris? And then go right over to Benny Snell, the number 2 back with Jaylen Warren out for this one.
Yeah, so Najee Harris looks pretty good, better in the util spot than the captain spot. But still, I mean, we've got Najee Harris optimal in the captain spot 11.1% of the time. I should say that he actually has the highest odds of anybody on the entire slate of being the optimal captain on DraftKings at that 11.1%. I say he looks better in the util spot because we also have him owned in the captain spot at 13.3%. So he's got some negative leverage there, but not a ton of negative leverage. And as I said, the most likely to be optimal captain according to our sims. So Najee Harris looks great. And then the util, we actually have positive leverage, 42% ownership, 48% chance of being optimal. I think that Najee Harris is likely to see the bulk of carries by a good amount in this game. I don't think that they want to be playing Benny Snell for 30% of snaps. We just saw a game a few games ago where I think Najee Harris played like 96% of snaps, something crazy like that. So I think that is the most likely scenario here, is that we see Najee Harris is the player that I feel more confident in. I mean, I guess that goes without saying, but Benny Snell is a guy that I don't think in a regular game script is going to see a ton of carries. I do find him a little bit interesting just because he played his first game of the year last game. He only played 3 snaps, but it was his first game of the year. And Jaylen Warren was active in that game, also only played 3 snaps. I assume Jaylen Warren was hurt mid-game. Yeah, that is what happened. I'm pretty sure. So they didn't have enough confidence in Benny Snell in that game to bring him in for a ton of snaps. Maybe with an additional week of practice, they're going to feel a little bit more confident, feeling that he's kicked off some rust. So I don't know. I think that there are outs for Benny Snell to get there. I think that in a regular game script, he's probably not going to see the field a ton, but there's always the Najee Harris gets hurt scenario. There's always just the Najee Harris runs it down, 30 yards to the 1 yard line, and they want to bring in the fresher back at the 1 yard line, or just garbage time. So there are outs for Benny Snell to get there. I actually kind of like him as a play just because we have him at 3% ownership, but got to acknowledge that there's a very real chance he puts up 0 fantasy points today.
A couple of things to break down there. First of all, the real difference here is we usually have the backup running backs priced at a salary that makes them kind of unappetizing, right, Neil? Where it's like 3,800, 4,800 on DraftKings, and that's not a huge discount. But because of Warren getting ruled out a little bit later in the week, we now have this situation where Snell, who, as you said, has some risk of ruin as well, like may not play nearly more than half a dozen snaps. Truly, that's as low as it could be. He's 200, and that's really what makes him appealing. And when we have a player that low that actually has a chance at legitimate snaps and even route share, he's definitely appealing. He's going to be on, I'm sure, your large field tournament player pool radar. Still, 89%. That is the snap share that Najee Harris played last week. That is the highest snap share he has seen since 2021, where he was routinely going over 90% snap share for this team. We have seen the team try to move away from that, but I think the Steelers may be forced into a no-choice situation where they have to play Najee Harris at least 85% of the snaps. So it doesn't surprise me that he's looking so good on the tools, both on FanDuel and DraftKings. Anything else to add for the running back position? Let's get into these wideouts if not.
No, I think those are the only two playable running. I mean, I guess in a 150 set, you could go to the fullback in Watt. I don't think that I'm playing Watt today. I think that, those are the two that I feel confident. If you really wanted to, I guess you could consider Watt.
I think you would say it's probably a one opportunity expectation for Watt.
Yep.
Yeah. If you simmed it out, maybe there's somewhere he gets 2 or 3, but not much more than that. At the wideout position, Kenny Pickett certainly coming on, certainly changing the way that these receivers are being used, because George Pickens, who I really meant to say, they have similar names, forgive me, he's certainly being used much more like a number one option. Deontay Johnson still clearly getting his within this offense, but you can't say that there's a clear alpha receiver. How are you breaking down these wide receivers? How are you utilizing them in your lineups?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Deontay Johnson, I view Deontay Johnson as the wide receiver 1 here, George Pickens as the wide receiver 2, and then it's a little bit more. I mean, those two are clearly at the top of the board. We have Deontay Johnson projected the best. I think that makes sense. I think that he's probably the top receiver here. George Pickens, super talented, has, definitely been picking up some steam, but we haven't seen him take the real leap that I was expecting after Chase Claypool got traded. He's just been targeted 10 times in the 2 games since Claypool was traded. So that's been a little bit disappointing for me, but I still think, they are, I think Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 1, George Pickens, wide receiver 2, both very playable. I think that they both have, plenty of upside here. In the last game, Deontay Johnson played 96% of snaps. George Pickens played 86% of snaps. Both have a lot of talent. So yeah, I think that they're both obviously viable, great plays here. Then it becomes more interesting with since the Claypool trade, the 2 wide receivers who are now looking interested. So we've got no Miles Boykin here, so we don't have to worry about him eating into it all. We've seen the past 2 games, Steven Sims played 38% of snaps and then 44% of snaps, and Gunnar Olszewski played 26% and then 42%. So both of these guys have been involved, kind of, I guess, splitting the wide receiver 3 duties to some extent. Kind of hard for me. Do you have any strong opinion on Steven Sims versus Gunnar Olszewski? Let's start there. I'd be interested to hear your takes, because I don't really have a strong read on who I'd rather go to here.
I think Gunnar Olszewski is more of a gadget player, and I do think he could get like a run play here or there. But we're talking about a player who's had 4 total targets this season. I think Sims, a player who has had 7 targets in his last 3 games with the team, it's just trending in the right direction for him a little bit more. I did want to go back to some super chats here. We did just finish the running back position. I saw one asking about over-under for 52.5 yards for Najee Harris. Based on our projected stats, he'd have to average about 3 yards a carry based on the rushing totals we think that he's going to have today. It seems like a pretty good over bet for me. How do you feel about over-under 52.5 rushing yards, Neil?
Yeah, I like that as a number. That's a pretty easy number. As a guy that I expect to play, probably 90+% of snaps, I think he'll have the opportunities.
And also, you get credit for the super chat etiquette as well, Teddy. Thank you for the super chat. But you were asking that as we were getting into Najee Harris. It's us who are behind, not you. You were stellar. This next one, I'm just gonna get through it, because I think you know what he's doing here. CW89, member for 1 month, and chooses his 1 month message to say, "Do you heart Cox, and will you jam Cox in everywhere tonight?" How are you feeling about Cox?
I'm feeling great about Cox tonight. I do understand what you're doing there, CW89. I think that Mo Alley Cox is a great play tonight. I appreciate the super chat. I think we've seen him have some opportunities even with Kylan Granson available. We've seen Mo Alley Cox has played 62% of snaps in each of the past 2 games. Now Kylan Granson out. I think that he's just probably going to see more potential opportunities in the passing game. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. I think of Mo Alley Cox as being a guy who's just a big body. He's a big Cox for the end zone there. Big red zone target. See what I did there? Big Cox in the end zone. I think that he's a very solid play. Certainly a kind of a boom bust play, but I think that he's got some talent on offense. So at relatively low ownership, nice price tag, probably some more opportunities here. I think he's really interesting. Do you see it any differently?
I don't see it any differently. We're not out of the woods with Jelani Woods either, because we have seen him command a small target share, but a large percentage of it near the end zone. He's had a 2 TD game with just 3 catches, 3 games with 3 targets, including week 9, his last time on the field. But Mo Alley Cox would be a slightly better choice, choosing between the two. And thank you. I'm glad you're a member here. And you guys you can be a member here as well at the Stokastic channel. You get the cool badges. You obviously get to leave a message when you get those milestones. Just a little swag for the channel. Pretty cool stuff. Hit the join button today. Corey Williams also has a super chat. Are you guys playing this game more from an upside, like a shootout perspective, or a floor standpoint, like maybe it hits that low total or maybe even goes below it? The value below the kickers seems really ugly. Thoughts, Neil?
Yeah, so I actually kind of like. I think the value below the kickers is, I'm not all that confident in any one of them, but I feel like there are a number of sort of interesting options below the kickers. As we mentioned, Steven Sims, Gunnar Olszewski are both pretty interesting to me. Ashton Doolin, I think, is playable. So I think we do have some options. And then of course, Jelani Woods, 1,400 on this slate, I think is pretty interesting. Actually, Mo Alley Cox is only 3,600. So I think that we actually have some fairly interesting options below the kicker. And then of course you can throw in Benny Snell there as well. So I guess I don't know that answers the question about whether we're playing the game for a huge shootout versus a low scoring game.
Well, let me ask you this. Yeah. So I know there are some pro players out there, Neil, who definitely will build around certain narratives, and in tools like Fantasy Cruncher, you can actually change what you think the score will be, what you think the passing and rushing breakdowns will be, so it creates actually different projections for you in there. You can sign up today, by the way. I got a great deal for you later on in the show, but it is a player-to-player thing. Do you kind of build that way, where you build 150 for a shootout or build 150 for a floor? Or are you kind of just looking at more of like player groups that make sense and try to use positive correlations?
Yeah, I build more for correlations, to be honest. I used to try to do that a little bit more, where I would give boosts in Fantasy Cruncher to like a defense if I have a kicker at captain, that kind of thing. And I think that's viable. If you want to build like that, that is a way to build it, to go in and make groups. If you're using Fantasy Cruncher and say, if I have a kicker in the captain spot, I used to give boosts actually to the other kickers and defenses, and also running back. Sorry, if I have the running back in the captain spot, other running backs, kickers, defenses, I would give boosts in the flex spot. Do stuff like that to try to build for a lower scoring game. These days, I don't really focus on that. I just focus on the correlation of my lineups, and to make sure. And generally, then, if I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I'm kind of building for a high scoring game, like naturally, because I'm building in the quarterback with multiple receivers. That's probably going to end up being a build for a high scoring game. But yeah, honestly, it's not something that's not the way that I build. I don't build for specific outcomes, which I hear Sharp say it all the time. You need to build for specific outcomes. I just try to eliminate lineups that don't have a chance of winning.
To be clear, like you said, Neil, it's definitely a viable way to look at things, to say, I'm going to build around the shootout potential of this game. And that's why at the beginning of the show, we talk about the range of outcomes of the game itself, the game environments, the key players, the actives and inactives, because we want to see, what is that shootout potential? What is the chance this game just bottoms out and is like a 16-6 game? Because there are people who are definitely building their handful of lineups around those specific narratives. It just may not be the way we build using optimizers these days. Malcolm with the super chat as well. Neil, he's got one lineup Who is the captain or MVP that you would choose for cash games? We'll just say for DraftKings.
Cash games. All right, let me look.
You're more of a tournament player for sure.
I'm definitely, I don't play cash games. So keep that in mind. We have Najee Harris optimal the most of any player here. I don't know if that necessarily means that you should go to Najee Harris, but certainly makes some sense. I think Matt Ryan is an interesting captain play.
I think on FanDuel, especially, Matt Ryan's very interesting to me.
Oh yeah, FanDuel. Oh, if we're talking FanDuel, that would be a different
and Jonathan
question.
Taylor, of course.
Yeah, so Matt Ryan is actually the optimal captain 14% of the time on FanDuel, even better. So I think, I'd probably go with Matt Ryan on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, it's, we've got a number of players that are right around that 10% number. We've got Najee Harris leading 11% optimal, Jonathan Taylor 10.4, Matt Ryan 10.1, Pat Freiermuth 10.1. But I think in general, you want to go to a player who has the highest floor in cash, and I think that I would rather go to. I probably wouldn't go to Pat Freiermuth in a cash setting. I love him for tournaments in the captain spot, but for cash, I would probably go to a quarterback, maybe consider one of these running backs just because they're probably going to get a lot of volume.
So let's round out the skill position players with the Steelers for a few more minutes. Let's talk about Pat Freiermuth, who you could argue over the last few weeks, he's got the tight end position label next to him, but he's been the receiver one for this team. 12 targets in week 11, led the team with 7 targets in week 10, 7 targets week 8, 9 targets, 9 targets in week 7. I mean, the man is just getting a ton of work from Kenny Pickett, and we see this a lot, rookie quarterbacks using dump down options like running backs and tight ends. Pat Freiermuth's a great play tonight, no?
I might even go so far as to say the Muth is Luth.
I knew that you would go there.
Yeah, no, I think that Freiermuth is a great play today. I actually, he was the title of the article that I wrote today. I don't always write the title, but I did write that I like Pat Freiermuth quite a bit. The price tag is he's $6,400, so he's cheaper than the other top pass catching options for the Steelers. And like you said, he's being targeted just a ton. He's a very talented young tight end. I like Freiermuth quite a bit. I think that he is one of the best plays on the slate. I probably would play him in a cash game setting, just probably not in the captain spot.
Yeah, I think he's definitely in my cash game lineups today. And Pat Freiermuth, where volume is king in fantasy football, he's gotten more use than Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. And that's just something that I want to take advantage of today. So it's definitely a player I'm very interested in. Any other tight ends you're going to, you are going to any Zach Gentry today? Is that the other guy for? Yeah, we got Gentry today as the secondary tight end.
I think Gentry is in play. So he's getting the past 2 games for the Steelers played 51% and 41% of snaps, and that's right around where he's been basically all season. He's not a guy who gets a ton of opportunities, but at relatively low ownership, which I should double check what his actual own. We've got him at 5% ownership at 2,200 price tag, and I think that this is the kind of game environment. There are games where like a 2,200 Chiefs tight end in a matchup with the Bengals or something. It'd be like, if he's going to get one opportunity and scores a touchdown, he's probably still not optimal at 2,200. I think in a game like this with a low total at 2,200, if he does score a touchdown, he's probably going to be optimal. So I think that Zach Gentry very much in play at 5% in a large field GPP.
I don't have any Zach Gentry, but that's why you're the Showdown Shaman. You know a little bit better than me. Listen to the man. And why don't you listen to this awesome offer we have from No House Advantage, the sponsor of today's show. No House Advantage, first of all, has an excellent looking platform, and they've got so many ways to win over there. First of all, when you sign up using the link below or the one that Mike Awesome Yo will put in chat here in just a moment, you get a $50 first match deposit bonus. And then you've got fantastic contests with really, really solid payouts and huge overlay right now. And that's such a way to build your bankroll right now in NFL DFS. Looking at the 10K to first, $15 entry Monday Night Football Showdown contest over there, it's just 44% full. The $5 entry 2K play action pass, just 39% full. And if you don't want to get into those contests where you just mark off prop bets by confidence rating, same stats you're using for DFS, you can use the versus the house mode over there, which is more like familiar prop betting if you're used to that world. And you can 20x your entry fee when you get all 5 right. Truly a great time to get into the action over there. Thank you very much to their sponsorship. Click the link in the video description below and get up to $50 as a first match deposit bonus. The Indianapolis Colts, why don't you just roll up Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor into one kind of group, because they are the obvious best plays. I mean, you could group Michael Pittman in there, but the quarterback running back battery here, they're just such high probability plays. You can certainly play them together. Break down how you're utilizing Ryan and Taylor tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jonathan Taylor looks like a great play here. I'm going to have him in the majority of my lineups. He is the most expensive player on the slate. He's also the highest projected player on the slate. It's a Pittsburgh defense that has been good this year. It's been fine this year, but it's not like the elite Pittsburgh defense that we have seen in years past. So I think that Jonathan Taylor should be able to, given the opportunities, I think there's a pretty good shot that Jonathan Taylor gets over 100 rushing yards. And I think, I would say Jonathan Taylor is probably the best play on the slate. He's the highest projected, although, even with the higher salary, it's not like his salary is that much higher than other players. So Jonathan Taylor, probably the best play on the slate. Matt Ryan, also a great play. He is cheaper than Kenny Pickett. I think, he's a quarterback on a 1-game slate. I would not play Matt Ryan in a lineup. I said that I would consider playing Kenny Pickett in a lineup without any pass catchers in the flex spot. I wouldn't play Matt Ryan anywhere without at least one pass catcher from Indy. Just doesn't have the rushing upside. And I would, if he's in the captain spot, I'd prefer to have at least 2 pass catchers from the Colts. We know who Matt Ryan is, right? We don't need to go in depth about who Matt Ryan is. He's just a quarterback who can throw pretty well, doesn't run a whole lot, might throw multiple touchdowns.
Yeah, and he might have 0 touchdowns because Jonathan Taylor just takes over. And look, it's been great to see. It wasn't quite as good a game against Philly, but it was still 94 total yards, 4 targets, 3 receptions, and 22 carries, of course. The week before against Las Vegas, I love the fact that Jeff Saturday is the only person to tweet about football from his couch that the Raiders are terrible and then have to back it up the very next week.
Yep.
And then does it. It's just chef's kiss.
That was beautiful.
But we all know the game that Taylor had against the Las Vegas Raiders in week 10. On a 95% snap share, he had 24 total opportunities, 163 total yards, the most points by any skill position player that week. We know that's in his range of outcomes again tonight. The Steelers' rush defense, that's the only thing that team does really well. But I'm still not counting out Jonathan Taylor. I love him on today's slate. You can bet against him at your own risk, but in terms of floor, ceiling, safety, ceiling, and salary-based expectations, you can't beat him on the slate. Any other running backs you're playing for Indy? And then if not, let's talk about Michael Pittman, the last part of the big 3 for Indianapolis.
Yeah, I don't think I'm playing any other running backs for the Colts here. Deion Jackson, the price tag is just too high at $5,000. It's going to be really tough for him to pull that off unless Jonathan Taylor gets hurt fairly early in the game. It's just it'd be a lot harder for Deion Jackson to pay off that $5,000 price tag than it would be for Benny Snell to pay off $200. So I don't think I'm going to Deion Jackson Zach Moss, I guess, is $1,000. So he could pay that off with 1 touchdown. Maybe if I were to play somebody, it would be Zach Moss outside of Jonathan Taylor of these running backs.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I mean, we do have Moss is a player that is kind of intriguing to me that I don't know if we'll see anything from him at all, but there could be that game scenario where if it gets out of hand because he's a newer member of the roster that he just gets extra usage and Deion Jackson not 100%. Still, when the backup running back for the Steelers is $200 in salary over at DraftKings, and then we're talking about the third stringer being $1K and the second stringer being $5K, you might as well just go to these wide receivers or tight ends and get a little bit more upside. And so obviously Michael Pittman looking really good in our tools. Break down Pittman. But what are the other wide receivers that you're kind of gravitating towards? Is it Pierce? Is it Campbell? Or are you getting any of these lower salary options at all here?
Can I just say once again how sad I am that I was so high on Paris Campbell locked him. I just jammed him into my lineups. He did absolutely nothing. People ridiculed me for wanting to play Paris Campbell, and he's been great like every single game since then. It was just like that was the last game of Paris Campbell being terrible. Now you can't get him at 3% owned in this huge field. You're gonna have to play him at 25% ownership, which is not quite as fun for me. But we won't start there. We'll start with Michael Pittman. He's a wide receiver 1 for the Colts. He's looking a little bit over-owned in the captain spot, a little bit under-owned in the util spot. We've got him at 10% captain ownership, 9% captain optimal, 40% util ownership, 43% optimal. I think that Michael Pittman is a very solid play on this side. I think he's the unquestioned wide receiver 1 for the Colts. You have to pay the price tag for that. I think the field, it would appear that the field has it about right, having him in about 50% of lineups. I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else that we need to say about Michael Pittman?
I don't think we need to say much more. A 98% snap share, 2 straight weeks for this team. The target share is a little bit lower than I wanted to see, but he's still number 20 in the NFL. He's number 7 overall in total targets this year, which actually kind of surprises me considering the quarterback situation that's occurred this year. In expected fantasy points, there's only 15 wide receivers in the entire NFL that have a higher per game rate than him. He's just performing a little below expectation. And we can say that we can have all the quarterback caveats we want. We've talked about that enough on the show, but I think Pittman is clearly a good player, and he's a good deal tonight when you consider his slightly, ever so slightly reduced salary compared to a player like Taylor. You know what else? You know what else is a really good deal is really what I should say.
Let's hear it. I want to hear about this.
This deal, this Cyber Monday deal that we've been throwing around over at Stokastic.com. Let's say you wanted to get into the action, you know, and you wanted to take a few days, but you wanted to check out everything that Stokastic had to offer, right? You know, you got the tools, the projections, the boom bust tool, the leverage scores, the top stacks, the lineup builder, the lineup generators, the player compare tools. We got a lot happening at Stokastic. And if you wanted it for all sports, maybe for 5 days, use promo code THANKS or click the link in the video description below. Thanks. It is truly the best deal of the year. $5 for a week of Stokastic plus Platinum. That's 90% off the weekly price. Only happens this time of year, guys. A great way to test the waters maybe on some of those sports that aren't your prime sport. Maybe win a few bucks, add to the bankroll so that by the time you get to your next main slate or your next NBA slate or whatever your main game is, you got a little extra gas in the tank. A really awesome way to check out all we got over at Stokastic.com and a way of us to say thanks to you. Use promo code THANKS or click the link in the video description below. And of course, hit the like button so that we see Neil tackled by an NFL player. That's clearly what we have lined up. You know how this works. All right, we got to talk about the rest of the wide receiver position briefly. Alec Pierce will be on the field. Ashton Doolin is actually someone I'm kind of intrigued by since coming back from IR. He's been utilized more than I thought. And with Kiki Kuti out, we actually have these 3 players, Campbell, Pierce, and Doolin, they'll have to see the field just by necessity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Campbell's been playing all year. That's why I loved him so much 4 weeks ago or whatever it was. And now he's actually been targeted. They're starting to actually use him. I think that Paris Campbell, you know, he looks like a fine play on this slate. He's not as exciting to me as he was at 3% ownership, but we've got him at 24% ownership in the util, 22% optimal. So a little bit of negative leverage there. He's not the first place that I'm going here just because I'm going to I have to rotate. I have to rotate to the guys who are not getting ownership now. And now he is getting about how much ownership he should in the captain spot, 5% ownership, 4% optimal. He's a fine play. I think that the field is getting to him about how much they should be in about just under 30% of lineups. That seems about right to me for Paris Campbell. As you said, he's been seeing the field for over 80% of snaps. He had one, I guess, with 79% of snaps, but for the past 7 weeks, he's played at least 79% of snaps in all of them. Actually, one game all year that he's played under 70% of snaps, and they have actually been targeting him recently. So I think Paris Campbell is a very solid play at, you know, the under 30% ownership. I think that's probably about where I want to be on Paris Campbell. Not taking a huge stand here. Do you see anything that I'm missing here with Paris Campbell?
I guess it's just the fact that Pierce did have that 8 target game against Philly. He himself played a 71% in snap share, but he ran routes on 89% of the team's dropbacks. 8 targets was one off of his season high and his highest since week 6. He only caught 3 passes, ended up with just 28 receiving yards, so it ends up being kind of a middling day for him. But the usage was to a point where, it caught my radar. And there is a significant drop off. Well, I guess with Pierce, we get 5,200. Compared to 6,800, that's still salary we can definitely utilize on a slate like this. I certainly have interest in Doolin now as well. I'm just trying to check Doolin's route participation rate last time he was on the field. It wasn't super high. It was 22%. We hadn't seen him above 20% since week 4. Still no targets. We're talking about a large field option, but the salary is right, no?
Yeah, I mean, the salary is definitely right for Ashton Doolin. He is a player that I have some interest in, again, just because, as I said, you got to rotate to kind of some of the guys who are not going to get a ton of ownership. And we've got Ashton Doolin coming in at 7% projected ownership. I would like to get above that number. He is 400, so close enough to the minimum for me. He's played just 20 and 30% of snaps the past 2 weeks, so it's not like he's getting a ton of opportunity here, but at that price tag, again, in a low scoring game, he wouldn't need to get a ton of catches to pay off that price tag and be optimal. I think that he's a fine player. I think that at 7% ownership, he's not a guy that I want to play 30-40%, but I want to be above that 7% number.
I think that's pretty easy to do. Even if you're playing just 20 lineups, that means just get him in 2 lineups and you're over the field. So not that hard to say. I can do that. Hey, my filler arc, what's up, man? Glad to see you in chat. Thank you very much for the super chat, and thank you to all of you hanging out. How many got hanging out here? We got 1,600 people hanging out. We're up to 300 likes. We could do. I think people know that they could do better than this.
I think they could definitely do better than 300 likes. I mean, just that ratio. I think the thing is, you scared them. They don't want to see me get hit. They like me. They don't want to see people hit me with football pads on. Is that what it is? Chat, can you confirm you're not liking the video because you don't want to see me get hit by a football player? That's what I'm telling myself here.
Okay, sure.
But so please do hit the like button.
Yeah, like it, and we'll do whatever Neil wants in terms of him getting hit by an NFL player. Just whatever it boosts his and our credibility to the point where we talk about, quote, real football. But my filler arc, to answer your question, I think it's very viable today to ditch Pickett and just play Najee Harris. We were talking about the potential for a 90% snap share. There's a risk here that the Colts do shut this down, but I think Najee Harris is one of the safer options on this entire slate. How are you playing him? Just break it down real quick before we go into the tight end position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Najee Harris looks great. He looks like he is. I mean, as I said, he is the optimal captain more than anybody else on the slate. Coming in a little bit over-owned in the captain spot where we have him 13% projected ownership. And in the util, we've got Najee Harris looking better. That's where I'd rather play him, coming in a little bit under-owned at 42% ownership, 48% optimal.
There you go. There's your Najee Harris answer for you and my filler arc. And all of you, thank you very much for those super chats. You talked about jamming in Cox earlier. We're definitely going to be playing Mo Alley Cox. He's the highest projected Indianapolis Colts tight end, but we're still talking about players in Cox and Woods who are under 5 median for projected fantasy points. These are not high probability plays. In tournaments, you're clearly going there sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly right. They are low probability plays. They're very much boom bust options. I think both Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods have red zone potential. They could score a touchdown and pay off the price tag, and even I think a little bit more than that. I don't think they're full on boomer bust options here with Kylan Granson out. I think that Mo Alley Cox could see more opportunities than just the one-off touchdown target, red zone target.
I'm just sorry. The chat has entered the gutter to the surprise of absolutely no one. We cannot. We have reverted right back to second grade, and it is just a wonderful time here in chat. We broke this down during the super chat earlier, but they are both players you can stack up with Matt Ryan. Neither of them have a salary above 3,600, and even Woods at 1,400 is someone that I think is quite viable. Nikola Kalanick is not someone. Kalanick? I don't know. I truly don't know how to pronounce that last name, and it's not a player I'm playing. Even
Yeah, I'm on the same. I looked at it. I was like, he played 26% of snaps in the last game, but he hasn't been targeted. I don't think he's run a route yet this year. So I think he's not really being used as a tight end in the sense that we want to play in fantasy.
Vinny C with an all-timer for the super chat. Jammin' and Cox probably missed an important previous part of that discussion. Yeah. No, you got it. No, they're definitely viable. They're not my favorite either. Let's talk about the defenses and kickers before they just yank us off the air. This is one where there's not a ton of value all over screaming value all over the place. So I assume defense and kicker are kind of high on your value list, especially with the sludge fest potential. That's the antonym to shootout, by the way. It's a shootout and sludge fest. I'm trying to make that catch on. So I assume you like kickers and defenses here a lot.
Yeah, in a game where we might not see a ton of touchdowns, I think these kickers look great. And then the defenses also look great in this scenario. We've seen Kenny Pickett throw 7 interceptions through 7 games. And we also have seen Matt Ryan is like the 5th most sacked quarterback on the year. Even though he's only played 9 games, Matt Ryan just gets sacked constantly, and also has thrown a number of interceptions this season. I think both of these defenses are very live to have just a great game here. I like the defenses quite a bit, but yeah, the kickers also not as sexy, but still just have the ability to put up a big game in a what could be a low-scoring game. These guys certainly have an increased chance to be optimal.
Man, the Steelers defense, though, if you look at the PFF grades, they're like 24th in team pass rush grade, 17th in team defense grade. This is supposed to be the staple of their entire franchise, is getting that defense right. And, we talked about some individual metrics at the top of the show. They're 5th in Football Outsiders rush DVOA. Congratulations. You can stop the run in the modern NFL. That's not going to do much in terms of winning. They're below league average in pass DVOA. They're 32nd in yards allowed per pass attempt. I'm not going to say Matt Ryan's going to go completely off all of a sudden, but there are some red flags to the point where I certainly want to play the Colts defense much more than the Pittsburgh Steelers defense if I'm just choosing straight up and I have the salary for either. I think you broke down why we could have Pittsburgh defense happen. Obviously, these are viable plays. They have decent median projections. And then from a kicker perspective, what are you seeing here? Are you playing much more Chase McLaughlin, or are you just trying to get kickers where it makes sense?
Yeah, honestly, I don't see a huge distinction here between these two. I think that both are viable. Both are coming in at under 20% ownership. Usually my goal with kickers is to play them, around 15%, give or take 5. Like I try to get a teen somewhere in the teens so that they don't kill me. But it's hard to, really predict for kickers. There are times when you look at our tools and see that a kicker just has extreme positive leverage, and sometimes then I will target them. I don't think that I'm going out of my way to really jam these guys. I guess Chase McLaughlin we have at 1.5% ownership in the captain spot, 3% optimal. So we've got some positive leverage on McLaughlin in the captain spot, on a little bit in the util spot as well. Not a huge stand that I'm taking. Actually, at Matthew Wright too, 2% projected ownership in the captain spot, 3.7% optimal. So both of these guys actually look good as captain plays just because of what they allow you to do elsewhere in your lineup. But not taking a huge stand, just trying to get to right around where the field is.
Would you play a kicker in the captain spot?
Yeah, I think it's totally viable. I mean, so people worry about upside with kickers. They think, kickers don't have the upside because they think, kickers rarely get more than like 15, 18 fantasy points, but it's the upside of your entire lineup. You play the kicker in the captain spot, that allows you to play both of Taylor and Najee Harris and a quarterback and get a little bit better with the rest of your lineup. So the rest of your lineup has more upside. And as long as they don't get beat by somebody cheaper, they could certainly be viable in the captain spot.
And if you are building from a game scenario or game narrative standpoint, I think it's very easy to say, well, the Steelers have some decent success against a banged up Colts defense that, while getting one player in Buckner back, isn't a world beater defensively, but they have drives stall out at or near the red zone. And so suddenly Matthew Wright is getting a ton of work, even in a possible losing effort. I think that a high score for either kicker is absolutely in the range of outcomes here. they're playable. They're certainly playable in tournaments. Not going to play them in the captain spot in cash. That's for sure. We got about 5 minutes left to lock. Get your questions in, of course, here. We're happy to answer them now that we got a little bit time before lock. As you start to build your final lineups for tonight, anything you're noticing in terms of who really stands out in your tools from the skill position players? We'll start with the Colts, and then we'll go over to the Steelers once again because it's been a minute.
In terms of who I want to play tonight, I don't know what I just did in my spreadsheet's not working. Yeah, I mean, I think from skill position standpoints, we've talked about all of the most interesting plays. I do think that both of those tight ends for the Colts are among my favorite. Mo Alley-Cox and Jelani Woods, I think both look very good at relatively low ownership. Mo Alley has actually come up to 11% ownership, so not like the real value end, but it's fairly low still. So I think both those guys very interesting. I think Gunnar Olszewski and Steven Sims both interesting at relatively low ownership. Not they should both see the field. They both actually come up to double digits as well. They were a bit lower earlier in the day, so a little bit disappointed to see these guys coming up in terms of ownership, but I still think the ownership makes sense. It's still relatively low. Yeah, I don't know. Besides those guys, I am getting to a good amount of Najee Harris, just because I think, especially now with Jalen Warren out, they're just going to rely on him more, and he's 2,000 cheaper than Jonathan Taylor. So I'm getting to more of Najee Harris currently than Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, that's actually surprising because Jonathan Taylor, just straight up from a projection standpoint,
yeah,
he's outpacing Harris by about 3 points in our projections. But
so
that
again,
$2K salary difference on DraftKings is enough to sway things for you.
Exactly right. And you got to keep in mind that I am leaving salary on the table. So that just makes it, if I'm playing Jonathan Taylor in a lineup, the lineup's getting pretty ugly pretty quickly. So I think that is part of the reason. And honestly, I'm okay with it. I think that Jonathan Taylor is the much better running back, but still, just given the opportunity as far as fantasy for this game, I think that I'm okay with playing. I'm still playing a good amount of Jonathan Taylor, but I'm okay with being above Jonathan Taylor with my Najee Harris exposure.
That makes sense to me. And the player that I really want to highlight once again is the tight end on the other side. May not have a fancy name, but his name's Pat Freiermuth, and he is pretty darn good for a second-year tight end. The 12-target game notwithstanding, he's been leading his team in targets consistently since he came back from that concussion, and he's had at least 7 targets in 4 straight games. More usage than I almost say Claypool, than Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. And while they might be making more of the highlight catches, he's been a real safety valve for Kenny Pickett. I really, really like this play tonight. We got 2 minutes left here, and we got a final super chat. DK, single entry, 3K players in that tournament. No QB, is that in play, Neil?
No QB is definitely in play on this slate. I think that there are plenty of solid options throughout the positions. And I think, this is a game where we might not see a ton of touchdowns, and quarterbacks really rely on touchdowns to put up big fantasy games.
I couldn't have said it better myself. As we wind down here, make sure you follow this man at PlayerQ DFS, the Showdown Shaman. He's got great written content for all of these Showdown slates as well before locks. And while you're here, don't forget to check out the Odd Shopper channel. It's got everything you need to make sure you're maximizing your profits on the betting side. You can shop bets, create your own parlay using our parlay builder, find arbitrage opportunities. It's just awesome over there what the data and tools team is creating over at Odd Shopper. Definitely check them out at oddshopper.com and the Odd Shopper YouTube channel. We've got a good one for you. Well, hopefully a good one. The Indianapolis Colts and Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the last show of the night over at Stokastic, but we got the process at 6:30 tomorrow morning. NBA, NFL, NHL strategy shows, and then the NBA deeper dive and live before lock on Tuesday. As I said, follow the Showdown Shaman at PlayerQ DFS. My name is Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. And thanks again to producer Mike behind the glass. Follow him at Awesome Yo. Thanks to all of you hanging out. Hit that like button on the way out, and we will see you guys soon. See ya.